Hey guys, and welcome to Simply Exposed Podcast with Haley and Sophie. Take a listen as we share some of our favorite memories and our struggles as we navigate through life.
As always, thanks for listening in, and do not forget to give us a follow. Remember, be a voice, not an echo. Hey guys, welcome to episode number 32, The Light of Bad Days. I'm Sophie.
And I'm Haley. Welcome, you guys. We've been gone for a little bit. Sophie's been moving.
Yes.
And packing her stuff and celebrating her birthday, which was
last weekend. Yes.
Yeah. So today we're going to talk about the light of bad days. And everybody has this. I truly believe that. Some people a little more deeper than others, which you'll hear about today. Sophie, what are the big things for you on the light of bad days?
I think just like, you know, when I'm going through like really bad times, just finding anything, you know, that I'm grateful for, or, you know, something positive throughout like the day or days that I'm feeling down, like definitely helps me get through it and, you know, get to the point of being better. Those are things that I try and, you know, think about and really use to get through
On the bad days?
Yeah.
I don't know. So those of you that may be just jumping into this episode, like Sophie and I are both on medication now for anxiety. And I feel like my bad days have really lessened.
Yes. Same.
But when everything seems to be crashing down, I still jump straight to depression.
Yeah.
And it's really hard because when I get in those depressions, it's like it feels like nothing can bring me out of those unless I step away from life.
Yeah.
And whether that means like blocking out my phone, blocking out social media, and like going to the store.
Yeah.
I mean, I think one of the biggest things is not assuming what people are going through, because there's days like Sophie will text me and I don't respond. And that has nothing to do with her necessarily. It's more of like, I need time for myself, and you never know what people are going through. Right. I mean, do you have that too, where you're like, fuck today?
Yes. All the time. All the damn time.
That's
I feel like at least once a week.
It's bad. I mean, so like Sophie and I have both dealt with anxiety and depression like our whole entire lives, especially some of the things we've been through. And the people that raised us also have gone through those, which doesn't help when you don't necessarily have a healthy parent or healthy parents raising you.
Yeah.
Like we want to give you guys some tips and like let you guys know that you're not alone with this. Even though it may look like I have all my shit together, like I'm married, I have kids, I have a house, or like, you know, Sophie has her shit together too, and it's in like a nice job and has kids, an apartment, and like all this stuff. Don't always assume that things are still going right all the time.
Definitely.
You work really hard to get where you are.
Yeah.
So the one thing that we really try to think about when we are having bad days is that like things won't last forever.
Yeah, like the pain won't last forever. One of the sayings that I go by is like, you know, there's always a rainbow at the end of a storm.
Yeah. We've said that multiple times in this episode or in this podcast, and it truly is true. I mean, if you look back 2 years ago, you'd be like, damn, how did I get through that? But I did.
Yeah. Well, you have to think about it. I mean, all storms, they don't last forever. It's not constantly storming. Like there's always an end. Some storms last longer than others. Some are very short. Some are very, you know, long, but they never last forever. So you have to think about it, you know, in that aspect. Like whatever you're going through will not last forever. Sometimes it's going to take way longer to get through it than, you know, on different time, but you will always get through it.
So one of the things that I always think about, and maybe this is, well, I guess this is a podcast and we're going deep into it, but like the stuff with my mom, the pain was it wasn't constant all the time.
Right.
Like there was some good times, and like I look back and I'm like, oh, I had a really good time doing that. But I went through a lot of pain with that relationship. And I think about like 5 years ago, like 7 years ago when I was with her, and it's like, I would have never thought I'm here today healing from that and not having a relationship with her. Like I
Yeah.
always thought that I was going to have that relationship some way or another. So I think that's one of the things too that people have to realize is you may think, oh my God, like this is never going to go away. Like people are never going to stop, but you are in control of your feelings and like your emotions.
Yeah, and who you allow to control those
Yes.
emotions as well. Like, you know, I have a lot of friends and a lot of people that I've talked to that like they have very toxic relationships with their parents or their family, and they always, you know, are like, well, they're my family. I can't just disconnect from them. Like it's hard for me to just, you know, make that wall and cut them off. And I'm like, you know, the longer that you put off doing that and cutting them off, like the more pain you're going to inflict on yourself, the more pain you're going to cause, because the only person that's in control of your life is you. Mm-hmm. You're the only person that controls how you're feeling. I mean, other people can impact that, but you're the only person that can tell your brain, yes, I'm feeling that way. Like, yes, this hurts me. And if they're continuing to hurt you, or, you know, somebody's continuing to make you, you know, feel like shit or make you feel bad about yourself and, you know, be toxic and, you know, just be overall shitty, you're the only person that could be like, okay, I'm done. I'm going to stick up for myself, and you're no longer going to be able to do that to me. And you have to be able to, you know, stick up for yourself enough and care and love about yourself enough to cut them off, whether they're family, whether they're a friend, whoever it is. You have to be able to care about yourself enough to be like, all right, I'm done. Mm-hmm. And that will truly help. Like Haley cut off her mom, and, you know, she's obviously been a lot better. Like it's still hard, you know, after you cut them off, but overall it's a lot better.
Well, and I think nobody talks about like when you cut off family is one thing, and when you set very strict boundaries is another. But like first talking about cutting off family, nobody understands the pain you go through, A, making that decision.
Yeah.
B, how long it takes to make that decision,
Yeah.
and be at that point, because you always go back and be like, well, maybe they're going to change this time after I have this conversation. And sometimes maybe that's true.
Yeah.
In my case, I didn't feel like that.
Yeah.
Every case is different, and everybody's story is different.
Yeah, definitely.
So, you know, if you would go talk to my mom, the story might be a little different than what I bring to you. And the biggest thing for me is it's not a competition.
Yeah.
On who's right or wrong or whose side you're going to be on.
Well, because everybody's feelings about the situation is going to be different. Nobody's the same.
Everybody's outlook is different.
Yeah, exactly.
So my biggest thing is like, how am I going to get through the pain? How am I going to, you know, there's some days where like we went to the zoo this past weekend with, technically my stepmom, Carrie. I've talked about her many times. She's been in my kid's life from day one. Yeah. And I still have those moments on these events going, well, what the fuck? Like, why don't you want to be here?
Yeah.
Even if you don't want to have a relationship with me, why can't you have that relationship with my kids? And I have to pull myself out of that.
Yeah.
The other thing is like setting up boundaries. I know you've done that very recently with your mom.
Yeah, it's very fucking hard. It's really hard to like not fall back into the trap either. And trap, I mean like fall back into their bullshit. Like, you know, I've talked about my mom being very toxic, and her and I have a very wishy-washy relationship. Like it can go from very, very good to very bad in like the snap of a finger. And my mom, her way of like trying to pull me back in is spending money and, you know, buying things, because obviously I'm a single mom. Like I can't financially make like big decisions on things that I want. So she'll make those decisions for me as a way to pull me back in. Recently, I had talked to her about how I wanted a bunk bed for my boys for our new place. And I was like, well, I don't really have like the extra money to spend right now because, I just spent money on a security deposit and first month's rent and having to pay my last rent. Like it was almost $2,300 right there. Like I don't have extra to be able to, go buy a bunk bed and 2 mattresses for them on top of it. So her and I had a spat, and I basically told her that I was fucking done with her and that I'm not going to talk to her, and that when I move, I'll come get all my shit from her garage, and that's just going to be that. And then, she was silent for about a week. And then at the end of the week, she was like, oh, I bought the boys a new bunk bed and 2 mattresses, and I got them new comforters and bed sets for them for the beds. And I'm like, okay, thanks. And then, a few days later, she's like, oh, I went and bought more clothes for the boys at Old Navy. They had a really good sale, and I went to Target. And she uses that as a way to try and pull me in. And for me, it's very hard to get out of that. Like, well, I constantly fall into that, trap, per se. And I don't know how to set that boundary of being like, fucking stop. Because it's hard for me. And I'm like,
well, and it's for your boys.
Yeah. And that's another hard thing too, is like, obviously like, I'm grateful for that. And I'm not saying that I'm not, but it's hard for me to fight for myself in those situations because it's for my boys. Mm-hmm. And like, the stuff that she's doing is for them. And I feel like guilty almost, like that she spent all that money. And for me to still just kind of be like, fuck you. You know what I mean? Like, trying to set that boundary after her spending that much money, like it makes me feel very, very shitty.
Yeah.
It's really hard.
Well, and I think that like you're very much in the gray area with your mom because things do go really good, things do go bad, and she does a lot for the boys. It's like the guilt trip stuff that's really hard to get past.
Yeah.
Where like in my situation, I was so done with it.
Yeah.
And I had been through it with her so many times, and I had to like make that decision my decision came because I don't know. Yeah. I don't even know. That's what's the hard part about it is like it was really hard. You just
kind of got to the point where you're like, okay, I have to do this for myself. Otherwise, like I'm just going to go down the hole.
I was after not the last argument that I officially was like, we're completely clearing this up and we're done. But the time before that, I was very, very, very depressed.
Yeah.
And there was more people involved than just my mom. So I think that's where I got, but I think everybody makes their situation. Everything's different. Every conversation's different. Nobody knows how it goes. So I think that's like one of the biggest things is don't assume.
Definitely.
Don't assume what people are going through. Just be supportive or ask what you can do or get someone a coffee or
it's the small things that matter. Like
send them $5 in Venmo and be like, hey, like
go get
I hope you have a good
yourself.
day. I'm thinking of you.
Yeah.
Those things can go a long way. So like the next thing we want to talk about is being in a depression or being a person that like jumps right into the depression state when there's bad days like Sophie and I do. One of the big things that I stick to myself, I'm not sure about you, is like suicide is definitely not an option.
Yeah.
And it's always been an option on my table. So that's really hard.
Yeah. I feel like, I'll be like driving home, after like everything is just falling down the rabbit hole. And I'm just like, okay. I feel like a lot of people have this exact thought where you're just like, okay, what would you do if I just like, off the side of the road and like hit a tree? I feel like a lot of people, I've heard it on TikTok. I've heard a lot of people say it. I mean, it's just like a thought that runs through your head, but like, I feel like it's over and over and over in my head, especially like, when I'm very stressed or, really down the rabbit hole and I'm just like in tears driving. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm just like, okay, what would happen if I just wrap my car around a tree right now?
So many times I've had that. Like, not only that thought, but like, would it really fucking matter if I left this earth and would people really give a fuck?
Yeah.
Or would they pretend and they would still come to my fucking funeral
Yeah.
and pretend like they were in my life?
Yeah.
And that, so maybe a little off subject, but so because my mom and I like don't have this relationship, like I told my husband, I'm like, people, I don't want like a funeral. Like I want my husband to like invite people that I gave a shit about
Yeah.
and that people gave a shit about me and reached out to me and like have a celebration or like, you know,
Yeah,
come
like
together in that
a
way.
celebration of life.
I don't know. That's just how I've always felt about it. But suicide is one thing that when I go in those modes, I'm like, I want to kill myself.
Yeah.
And that's like really hard to think about because I've been there so many times.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people, you know, just think that the people that think that all the time are doing it for like attention or, you know, just to say that they feel that way. But it's like, it's a thought in your mind that just constantly bombards like certain people when they're in these states. And it's like, would I ever actually do it? Meh. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
but
I've been close a few times.
yeah.
Especially like in high school.
Yeah.
I've been close, very, very close. But it's I think we've talked about, I don't remember what episode we talked about this, and I'm sure we'll get to it at some point too, but like for me, I used to like scratch my
Oh,
legs
that's what I would do.
to the point of like I needed the pain
Yeah.
and it felt good
Yeah.
to actually feel because I would tune out everything.
Yeah. This, you know, this might be a trigger warning. We probably should have put that on.
Yeah.
It's fine. But yeah, I used to get called in high school an attention whore or like I don't remember the other word because I wouldn't like actually legitly like cut myself like with a razor. I used to take the spiral notebook and literally cut it at an edge and just scratch the fuck out of myself
Yeah.
or like scratch my arms, scratch my thighs. Just over and over because it would cause blood, but not enough that it's like
Death.
gashing open. Like it would just be enough to release those like endorphins and get all that out.
Well, what people don't understand too about like cutting yourself or like causing pain to yourself is when you are that deep in depression or want suicide, you are completely numb to
Yeah.
the world. A lot of things don't fucking matter.
Yeah.
And it sounds really selfish. I know that like when people do commit suicide, people go straight to, well, that person's very selfish. And honestly, you never know what that person's going through in their brain and all the pain that they've been through.
Yeah.
I'm in a much better state than I was maybe 5 years ago. But I will tell you what, like, I still had those episodes of like, I wanted to cause pain to myself to feel again.
Definitely.
Like, nobody understands how numb it feels
Yeah.
to be in a hole like that.
Yeah. I feel like, you know, you and I in particular are very good at like not letting that show. So I feel like, you know, in high school, I used to get called all these names and you're like, oh, you're just putting on a show. You're just doing it to try and be cool. First of all, no one's cutting themselves or hurting themselves to be cool. Okay.
No.
Second of all, just because we're good at hiding it and good at putting on a front and pretending to be happy doesn't mean that deep inside we're not absolutely crumbling at the seams. Like people are very good. Some people are very good at making it seem like they're so happy and that they have, you know, nothing wrong in their life and that, you know, they're doing so good and, you know, they got their shit together and, you know, they're at this like ultimate high, right? But inside they could be at their ultimate low and you just might not know.
And that's where like I'm always like,
You
do
never
not assume.
Yeah, you never know what people are truly going through inside their brain.
And I think too it is like you don't always you don't know what people need.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like, for people like Sophie and I, we don't know what we need.
Yeah.
So a lot of time it is just getting away for a day or a few hours to just like clear our heads a little bit.
Yeah. And like decompress.
I mean, one of the biggest things that we always talk about is our medication has helped our anxiety a lot, but that doesn't mean that that shit goes away.
Yeah. Oh no. It
We
just
still have
like,
it.
yeah, it just like slows down a little
Yeah.
bit.
The next thing that we want to talk about is like people do care about us,
Yeah.
but a lot of times when you're in those bad days,
It's really
don't
hard
see
to
it.
see it. It's so hard. Like even when I'm not in those states or episodes, like I feel like it's very hard for me to feel any type of love. Like obviously, you know, I can feel loved, like I can, but I need it in certain ways. Like my whole life, it's been very hard for me to feel like anybody has cared about me or, you know, give a shit about me. But, you know, I really have to like think of small moments.
And this goes back to people's childhood
Yeah.
and the experiences they've had. So obviously, Sophie and I always talk about going to therapy. We don't ever, even if you think you're like in the best mindset, I still think it's a good thing to go through. Even if you do it twice a year, just to get everything out. Medication is a good start too. If you're feeling anxiety, depression at all.
Yeah.
But like for you, when we talk about like you can't see that people care about you, I think this one's a little harder for you because the shit you've been through, people said that they cared about you, but did stuff to show that they didn't.
Yeah.
Multiple times.
And that's why I also have, which I've talked about previously, is like extreme trust issues. It is very hard for me to like put my full trust into somebody because so many times I've been told, oh, I love you, oh, I care about you, but those are the people that have hurt me the most.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do I truly trust that you care about me when like you're hurting me?
Right. My kids are crying upstairs like
they are.
constantly. The other thing, it's really difficult to fight for yourself, and this kind of goes with the suicide is not an option.
Yeah.
But it's hard to see why you should fight for yourself
When you're already like so low, you just feel like you're worthless and like all the bad things about yourself. And it's like, I can't fight for myself when I feel like I'm nothing, you know? And I just like recently, especially at work, I've been like kind of going through like a mid-work depression, I guess you could say. Like I just feel very invisible. And I talked to my HR about this. Like nobody talks to me throughout the day. Like I'm in my own department and I run my own department all by myself. So like I get it, but I just feel like consistently left out. And that's really hard for me because then it kind of like ruins my mood for the whole day or the whole week. And I just feel like I feel invisible all the time, even though that's not true. So that's been kind of like pulling at my strings too, is like, I don't know, just feeling left out and out of the loop. Like that's really hard for me to stay afloat in that sense.
Yeah. The other thing is like small things do matter in life. Doing little things for people, and that's kind of what we said before, is like sending people $5 and be like, hey, I'm thinking about you, or
you know, and it doesn't always have
text.
It doesn't always have to be like financial stuff either.
No.
Like I don't need you to buy me a coffee. Like if you send me like, you know, a text that takes 3 minutes out of your day, just like expressing your love for me, or, you know, being like, hey, I'm there for you, love you, I'm always here, whatever it is, yada, yada, yada. For you to send that, you know, throughout your busy day, throughout your busy life, like to just think about me enough to send me, a small text, whatever, like that goes a long way for me. Like that reassurance really, really helps me.
So I think if you're like listening to this right now and you're thinking of someone that you're like, oh, I haven't reached out in a while, it doesn't have to be a conversation. Just be like, hey, I'm thinking of you.
Yeah. Here
and
for
like
you.
that goes a long way for a lot of people because you never know what people are going through.
Yeah.
The other thing is like taking some of these little points that we've said and just putting them in your notes for when you are in the light of bad days.
Yeah.
That can really help your mood and talk through this. Listen to this episode again. Like you are not the only one going through this.
Yeah, you have to find anything to become the light in your bad days to help you get through it to the light.
And the other thing is if you are feeling down, do not forget we do have a Google form. If you feel like you have no one to talk to or you just want to
decompress, get your feelings out.
Yeah. Go ahead.
It's fully anonymous if you want it to be. It's just kind of a place to help those who don't have access to, therapists, those who can't afford it, just a safe place to be able to let everything out. And, it's judgment free, like, and
we understand.
Yeah.
Like we may not understand your situation fully, but even if you want to go out there and just say, fuck, fuck this, fuck life. It's fucking hard.
Yeah. It's just kind of like an online journal almost. Just, like a journal input to just get everything out and just,
So that's right. If you go to our Instagram, there's our link tree. You just click on our link tree right there and the form will be up.
Yeah. The URL's in our bio.
Yep. So, definitely take a look at that, especially if you do get down on your days and you may need a place to
safely vent.
Yeah. Just decompress and stuff. So there's that. The other thing I want to kind of explain, like our new, like be a voice, not an echo.
Yeah.
Do you want to explain a little bit what that means?
Yeah. So, be your own person. Definitely. Like, I feel like it kind of goes into the fact of so many people are trying to just be a follower and not lead themselves and, and trying to be someone who they're not.
Yeah.
So you need to be your own voice and not just repeat what somebody else is saying. You don't want to be the echo. You don't want to be left in the dark, in the dust. You need to be the voice that's being heard. You have to be you.
Yeah. And make your decisions for yourself.
Yeah.
What do you need in life? So yeah, I hope this episode like helps you guys out so much, especially in the light of bad days. Everybody has them. Some might be deeper than others.
Yeah.
And don't assume.
Yeah, definitely.
And reach out to those people. Reach out to those people that you have not talked to that you may want to like ping a little bit and be like, hey, I'm thinking of you today. Yeah. All right, definitely. Listen to this pod and I'm thinking of you.
Yeah. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and click the little, bell, so you can stay up to date and get all the notifications for our new episode drops and all the fun stuff there.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for listening and we'll see you